Hello, you're listening to the new Lampteys show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
Right, okay. Lots of games against Ipswich that finish 1-1. Let's see if we can pick out some moments of the week from them. Paul, why don't you start us off?
Well, I'm going to go with we're playing Ipswich again. That's hardly as shocking. Going with, we've gone 1-0 behind at home again. That's hardly a shock. Now, in the first 3 games, home games of the season, home in inverted commas, get out of the way, we didn't concede a goal at home. Since then, we've conceded a goal in 7 of the following 8 games. But when have we conceded these goals, Paul, I hear you ask? Well, interestingly, on 7 of the 8 games, we've conceded the first goal. The other one was a 0-0 draw against Accrington. So we concede, if there's a goal in the game that the opposition score, they tend to score it before we've scored. And Blackpool obviously went 2-0 up. Most amazing out of all that, only on one occasion against Tranmere have we actually lost the game. But not the other 6 times, the Tranmere game was the only game where they actually scored in the second half. They waited till the second half. The other 6 times, we've been behind at some point in the first half. And it's odd, don't you think, that we just concede the first goal at home virtually every time we play at home, yet we've got a really good home record. And when you think of in the past, whenever we've gone behind, we tend to lose. I think that's remarkable. This team continually pulls it out the bag. I mean, obviously it'd be better if they weren't continually going 1-0 behind, but at least when they go 1-0 behind, you don't think we're going to lose. And against Ipswich again, it's like, we'll get onto the game, but again, we've come back from behind. We seem to be doing it every week. It's just remarkable based on my history of being a Cov fan.
They're big, brave boys, aren't they, this team?
There is something about them. There is definitely something about them.
Yeah, I mean, without wanting to be flippant, I agree with you. I always think that we're personified, certainly in my lifetime, by going 1-0 up and losing 2-1. Certainly for that spell of the sort of the latter championship years and the start of the League One years, that seemed to be our very kind of essence. So it is jarring to see us go 1-0 down so frequently, and for me to not just immediately assume that we're dead and buried. It's good though, isn't it? I know that there's lots of things with this season that are good and lots of things that are bad. That's one of the things that's good. Obviously, you'd prefer not to keep going 1-0 down, but I never feel like we're out of a game at the minute.
Nope.
Neil, your moment of the week.
My moment of the week. So just to extend on that, one of my moments of the day was just looking at the table and having a jolly good think about the fact that we've only lost 2 in the league this season, and it's basically Christmas. I've just not been thinking about it too hard, but when you actually consider the fact that we've only lost 2 out of 19 games, I mean, I cannot remember us being this kind of sturdy this far into the season. Even in those good seasons in League One previously, or our League Two season, we were losing games. This is a bit balmy. But also what I was thinking about was, I remember last year, it was about March the 9th, and we were talking on this podcast about what it would take for us to get to the playoffs. And I was there and I was saying, we're on 42 points now. That's 11 points away on March the 9th, and last year I was all for us making the playoffs. So this is all coming to, basically, I think we're having a good season, and I think we're doing better than last year. That's my point there. But actually, my moment of the week is the return of Matty Godden. Just because I was getting a little fed up of not really having options. So him being back far quicker than anybody really expected is a major boost for us. And while he only had about 5 minutes the other day, it was good just to see him back on the pitch and him almost setting up a goal. So yeah, a bit waffly, but those things happened this week.
No, so I'm all for all of those, but to take one of them at a time, I think the Matty Godden thing is interesting in that, weirdly, I almost wonder whether that injury gives him a chance to reset, because it was difficult to know what we'd seen of him up until that point. And I gather he'd been carrying... Paul, was it you that said that he'd been carrying a knee injury for something like 8 years, that he just sort of hadn't ever really dealt with, and that possibly this goes some way towards remediating? Did I dream that, or...?
I think he has been injured for a while. I think they were saying...
Yeah, that's what I said, 8 years.
Yeah, and I think... This is one of those things. I think before his injury, he was playing poorly.
Well, and that's what I mean about.
I agree with your resetting. I think it's almost been kind on him because everyone's sort of forgotten that he was playing poorly before the injury, and now he's come back sooner than everyone was expected. I think everyone's But I mean, as I said, the reality is he scored 8 goals this calendar year, which is exactly the same as the very maligned Bakayoko, and 3 less than the almost can't play at all Hawula. So I just find that interesting as well. Like Hawula's almost forgotten in the entire scheme of things, but he's actually, of the players at the club in 2019, had the best year.
Although I can't stand that talk of 2019 or a specific calendar year in football because they just don't exist as far as I'm concerned. Right, I want you to guess my moment of the week this week because I think it was about as predictable as anything I could go for as moment of the week.
Is it?
I'm going to be terribly disappointed if you don't know what my moment of the week is. You clearly don't, do you?
I really don't. I will as soon as you say it, but I'm worried now.
Jervain Castaner getting booked
Yes.
whilst not even on the pitch, obviously.
Yes, of course.
It was, as well, it was a brilliant thing to see on iFollow because iFollow looked like they'd positioned their cameras specifically just to capture that entire moment. And Oggy was furious as well because, and I thought he was quite unfair on Castaner. He had suggested that the entire thing was going to be nothing until Castaner had waded in. But that's simply not true. It already started kicking off. It's just that Castaner got the tastiest start.
I love the difference between so Castaner does what he does. He came in there. I don't think it was that bad really. He was just trying to stop something. About 5 days before that, you had Josh Eccles doing something very similar. Well, not quite similar, but getting involved, all the argy-bargy, all that sort of stuff, and the whole Coventry world saying what a great guy he is. Oh, look at him backing up his teammate. Castaner does it, and people are like, why does he get involved? Obviously, people like you and I think it's great, but he was. I just think there's just unfairness there towards him because I don't. When looking at it again, I don't think he was doing anything too bad. I think he was just protecting his mate, which is what we all want, isn't it?
Yeah. He was just in the right place because they were 2-on-1 against McCallum, weren't they?
Yeah.
But it was the fact that it was the speed at which he steamed in and the fact that he just grabbed him straight by the neck.
In his duffel jacket, yeah.
It just looked so odd, didn't it? But obviously I don't want to see him on the pitch at the minute because every time he's played recently, it's boiled my piss. But I love the fact that there are some people in life who just unable to be on the periphery, even when he's literally stood on the sidelines. He had to be the person that took that moment by storm. There's just something exciting about him, isn't it? Even though most of it is absolutely rubbish. Right, okay. So, Paul, a second game against Ipswich in 7 days? Was it 6 days? Doesn't matter, does it, really?
Yeah, within a week.
Yeah. What did we learn? What was new?
Well, I'll be brief. But I'm just going to go back to one of Neil's moments of the week about how many points better off do you think we are from this time last season?
Ain't got a clue.
Well, guess.
Okay, probably not because you brought this up. So we're probably worse off than we were last year.
No, we're 2 points better off.
You really subverted my views there, Paul. I was just expecting you to go one way completely. Okay, fair enough. That makes sense.
But we'd won more games. We'd won 8 this time last season. We've only won 7 this season. I think we're virtually where we were a year on. It's just we're about where we are. But it feels better, and it felt better against Ipswich. I mean, it's a bit of an odd one. Football's a very transient thing where you sort of concentrate on what happened most recently is what sticks in your mind. So because of the way that Cov work, where we have spells of like 35, 40 minutes of utter dire and 40, 50 minutes of utter goodness, you come out of the Ipswich game going, well, we could have won that 3-1. And then you talk to the person next to you and like, yeah, we could have done. And then your brain's going, but that means we would have only been, we're assuming then we took all 3 of our decent chances in the second half, which we only really had about 3. On the same principle, if Ipswich had taken their 3 decent chances in the first half, we'd have been 3-0 down at half time. And I think that's where we have to start. The fact the first half, we were all right for the first 10 minutes, probably just edging it. and then we went to utter poo. Ipswich, I believe from what Don was saying, they didn't make any changes from the week before. We played the 3-4-1-2 system that got us back into the game. And Ipswich slowly worked out that we had a big gap behind both fullbacks. And that's no disrespect to McCullum, who I think had a really good first half and was possibly the only player in the first half in the Cov team who you thought, yeah, he's having a good, solid game. The keeper didn't really have much to do. The other 9, I think there's question marks over all of them to certain different degrees. Dabo at the right back was one of those players. They worked out that he would like to get forward, so they just basically kept running in behind him. And it was causing Rose all sorts of problems. And they were dominant in that area. On the other side, I think Hyam is just a better player than Rose at the moment. And that our left-hand side defensively looked more secure, but also that's where Ipswich had their best chance from. Again, that ball into the channel, we've seen us concede this quite a few times recently. I think the ball got played into midfield. Their lone striker came forward. Fadson went with him, and you were like, oh, okay, you're leaving us 2-on-2 at the back. Shit. And they played the ball down the channel. Hyam couldn't get there. Ball came back over, and they missed their chance. And you were like, okay, that's one of the gifts we're going to give them. Let's hope we they're just as profligate with the other chances. A couple of minutes later, they had a corner from which they scored. A basic set piece. A sort of corner that you think, God, if you scored that, why don't we score 50 set pieces a season? It's just simple. And Ipswich were clearly on top at this point. Kelly in midfield, I think we're all big fans of Kelly, was dire. He just couldn't get on the game. They were pressing him really high up. His passing wasn't good, but he didn't really have many options because they were stopping his natural ball out wide. Because Walsh isn't there, he was just quite a good give and goer. He had Westbrook, and just going to concentrate on Westbrook for 1 second. I feel very sorry for him. He's played quite a lot of roles recently, and Saturday he was being asked to play like defensive midfield on the left-hand side, while recently he's been playing as an attacking midfielder on the right-hand side. And what he's been asked to do previously was box to box. On Saturday he was asked to sit. And he didn't quite know where he was going. And again, he didn't really have that many options because O'Hare was so far forward that both Kelly and Westbrook just got stodged down by the way that Ipswich were pressing and the lack of numbers we had there, because we didn't have an easy outlet to the wing-backs because Ipswich were closing them down quickly. We were struggling a bit, and we played quite a lot of long balls, which we haven't really done all season, to Biamu, who was winning his fair share of flick-ons, but we're not that sort of team. So Bakayoko was never right next to him, which I don't really blame Bakayoko for, because, as I said, we don't play that style of football. You go back to the early 90s when you had Lee Chapman and Rod Wallace, of course they're going to stand right next to each other because that's what they did, Kevin Phillips and Niall Quinn. But Bakayoko and Biamu have never played that way. We don't play that system. So it seemed odd to me that Bakayoko was getting a lot of stick for not reading these flick-ons when it didn't look like that's not how we play. So to just introduce it into this game seemed a bit odd. It wasn't quite working. And then Ipswich were on top. They got 1-0 up, and we weren't flowing. There was no one really dragging the game forward for us. We weren't getting onto the ball as we have done previously. Whether or not Walsh's injury was key to that, it's hard to say, because I don't think the system really helped us out. And then just before half-time, Liam Kelly or Westbrook took a quick free kick, and O'Hare just headed it over, and you were like, "Ooh, we're still in this. We're only that sort of 1-0 behind, which we are, as I said, often at this point 1-0 behind."
I think it was Shipley, by the way.
Was it Shipley who took the free kick? And the other thing that happened, obviously, just before that, was Hyam went down injured, and that meant we had to change the system. So we went to a flat back four, and then put Shipley and Westbrook and Kelly into midfield. Bakayoko went wide right. O'Hare went wide left. And it just gave us that stability. Through Ipswich, I think we've been planning for 3-5-2, and obviously worked on it, and it was working really well for them. We weren't really sure how we were going to cope, and then suddenly we had this injury. We changed the system. We came out the second half, and everything changed. You can tell when Liam Kelly's having a good game because he dives a lot more. He wins those niggly free kicks, which aren't free kicks because he's basically thrown himself to the floor. But he wins them. When he's not having a good game, he doesn't even try and win those. It's just he just tries to stay on his feet. But when he's sort of in the flow, he's happy to fall down. And you could sort of see that was irritating the Ipswich players because suddenly we were getting more free kicks. The sort of flow was a bit more in our favour. And we were just getting gradually on top. And Ipswich, I think the stats were Ipswich didn't have a shot second half. They didn't know how to resolve the issue of us having three midfielders who were all competent but close to each other. So it was easy for us to get out balls. It was easy to go out to Bakayoko on the right and out to O'Hare on the left because they were getting space. So we just grew into the game. And then Kelly, who I said before was fucking awful, then played a brilliant pass through to Biamu, who took Biamu there's definitely, I think he's made comments about the fact he's changed his game since he first signed for us. And, that's evident to anyone with any sort of brain that he's no longer the player he was. He's developed. It's such a shame that he's probably developing. It's come quite late to him in his career, but he really is just becoming a better player. And he ran on. And once he was through on goal, you knew he was going to score. You knew he wasn't going to waste that opportunity. And the only criticism I'd have after that is we didn't really force Ipswich into many more mistakes. We didn't create that many more chances. And then Alan came on, and he ran around quite quickly. I think a lot of people are saying he was brilliant. He wasn't brilliant. He wasn't crap. It was quite a frantic game, and he came on and ran around frantically. It'd be interesting to see him 90 minutes over a couple of games to see what he really offers us. But there's definitely a player of some sorts there. I think we've got to hold on to the fact that he isn't, last season was his best ever goal return in league football. I don't think we can expect this guy to score us 10 goals or anything like that. I think, let's see how he goes. But it's good to see him back on the pitch. I think it gives us an extra option. Whether or not we need that extra option in the midfield is a different mute point. But we do have that extra option. As you said earlier, Godden came back on. I think he touched the ball once with a header down to Allen.
What a touch.
But it was, basically, I think he was a 93rd minute sub. So, again, he was he was there for that chance, and he sort of did have an impact as slim as that was compared to sort of Huulu against Sunderland, who did fuck all. So, in essence, yes, you walk away going, we could have won that. But in reality, if both teams were absolutely lethal, we'd have been 3-0 down at half time and we'd have had to score 3 to equalise. So, in reality, as frustrating as it is, a draw was probably a fair result.
I think we'll kind of take it as well in the context of that match specifically. Like you say, just how they were good first half, and they do clearly look like a good side. But I just think, we did turn it round, and it was probably by accident as well. Like you say, like that changing system, we weren't able to play our normal game for the first 40 minutes, I'd say. Our normal game is get the ball down, try and pass it out of defence. That's how we like to play. They had 4 players up on our penalty box for that first period, and then we just threw them. And I do like it when, so sometimes I like it when you don't have to overthink things and you just have to make a change and it just falls in your favour. And I think the split between the halves was quite evident. And I mean, I'm looking at stats now. It says we have 15 shots compared to their 6. Well, I don't necessarily know what those 15 shots were, but I think there is an argument to say that having turned it around, we probably, I think we probably should have gone on to win it. But all told, I'm all right with the point. It might be another draw, but we're playing probably the best team. I still think probably the best team in the league. And as over the course of the 2 games, I think we're quite a good match for each other. So it's the decider tomorrow, today, whenever you listen to this.
The thing for me, I expect, is that I sort of feel like we are gonna. I'm probably wrong about this. I feel like we're gonna get better as the rest of the season goes on because, or at the very least, there's reason to believe we will get better as the season goes on because I think there's a good chance that Godden and Allen coming back will improve us, and Jody Jones potentially coming back will improve us. And we've not really, given the fact that he was out of favour and then suspended for quite a while, spent the first half of the season with Biamo up front to the extent that we expect that he will be for the second half of the season. And I think with just a sprinkling of luck, those things might contribute to us being better than we are now. And I don't think we need to be a ton better than we are now to be quite a lot higher up the league, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I said it in the last podcast. I still maintain that across most of the games this season, we have been the superior team, but we just haven't had that sort of clinical edge, or we've just made daft mistakes. So I completely agree. I think obviously these things can go either way. You can regress, and things can't go your way. And you maybe confidence goes down, or you can kind of make that step up and actually start converting the chances that you create, start to believe in yourself a little bit more. Because at the moment, I think we're still playing like 80%, 85%. I do think there's there's definitely more to come from us.
Paul, what do you think about that?
Yeah, sort of yes and no. I mean, as I said, ultimately, first half we weren't particularly good, and if Ipswich had taken their chances, would have been 3-0 down. I've seen that quite a few times this season. Go back to the Fleetwood game, that was exactly the same. If they'd have taken their chances, we'd have been out of it. I think ultimately our home form is good. We are a good side at home. The evidence is we've only lost once, and I think the Ipswich game is just another sign of the fact that we are a team who has spells where we're really good and spells where we're less good. The problem, my only sort of concern is we haven't made hay while the sun is shining. We should be, with our home form, probably second. As you said, we haven't been outplayed by anyone at home. We've only had one really aberration away from home, and that was against Rotherham. But I think we're not that far. I sort of agree we're not that far off being a good side. I think we're also probably an unlucky injury at the back away from being a bit of a concern that way as well. We're not keeping clean sheets. We still don't really know what our preferred system is. And it'd be interesting if we go back to 4-3-3, where Godden fits in that, because Biamu has to be your main striker. So we have to play two up front for Godden to feature or to... But then how do you fit Allen in? I'm not sure how the players we've got, while I'm happy they're back, I'm not sure what holes we're waiting for them to fill, because I could accept the fact that you'd play Godden up front with Biamu, but I'm not sure that he's going to stick with 3-5-2, especially if I don't know how long Hyam's out for, what Hyam's injury is. If he's going back to 4-3-3, then Godden's only a sub player anyway. And it'll be interesting to see where he fits Allen into that three in midfield with Westbrook, Shipley, because Shipley's an odd player. Sometimes you just frustrate him, but the fact he carries the ball forward, he does all those things that we need a player to do. Now, if Allen comes in and does that role and does it better, then that's not an issue. But I think Shipley's natural, the fact that he's left-footed gives us a really nice balance. So I'm not sure. We probably have missed Allen, but to some extent it's unknown how much we have until he gets into the side and has a settled run. But it'd be interesting to see what formation he goes with. Bugger tomorrow. I couldn't give you less of a shit about Ipswich. Shrewsbury is the interesting one. Shrewsbury and Lincoln are two relatively nice games before our Christmas break, and then we play Wickham again. Or we play Wickham for the first time. So how we go forward from here, we're halfway through the season. We don't really know what our first 11 is or our settled system is, but we're in a really good position. Let's see where we go from here.
Neil, question for you. Who's been our best midfielder this season?
All told, I'd say Liam Kelly. And that's strange to say because he had a period out, but I think we are a different team with him when he's not there, we feel it. And even if he was to drop out the team again this weekend, our options are to replace Liam Kelly are minimal. I've already said it. I don't think Liam Walsh is the same sort of player, and if he's in the team, he can do a job, but he's not the same role. So it's kind of based on performance, but also based on influence as well. I think Kelly is he's key for us, and we need him to stick around until the end of the season.
Paul?
Yeah, probably Kelly, but I think they've all had moments of being really good,
which is good in a way that we because like you were just saying that. I mean, we may say, well, where do we fit Allen in? But Robbins is a swapper, isn't he? He'll quite happily drop Shipley one game, bring him in, first choice next. Same goes for Westwood. There's sort of this rotation going on where they only really have a couple of games to make sure they've got, they're in form, and if they're not, then he'll find a way to kind of adjust things, which is a weird sort of luxury that we've kind of got at the moment. But like, there's only an injury away where suddenly you have to shoehorn someone into another position, which then throws the balance a little bit. So I'm more than happy that we've got these options back at the moment, because while we worry, he's just going to be sat on the bench, or where does he fit in? Let's face it, he'll fit in eventually, and we'll need him sooner rather than later, I'm sure.
And that's the thing, isn't it? We've got to probably, if anything, 6, 7 central midfielders who could all do a job.
Yeah,
and they're all different but quite similar as well. And that's, as I said, I'm not sure how he's going to, because the 4-3-3 sort of worked in the second half in terms of we were the better team, but as I said, we didn't really create many chances. I think you could make the argument that Ipswich defence quite good, but in reality, we the first 10 games of the season we picked up 20 points, and the next 9 we picked up 11, and with that we've just scored fewer goals. We're just not scoring. We probably is because we've lost the wingers. I think it'd be interesting to see who he goes for in January, what type of player he gets in. But I think that all goes down to what system he wants to play. If he wants to play 4-3-3, we desperately need a wide player. But Castaneer sat there twiddling his dick. It's sort of a case of we need a better wide player, don't we? Yeah. Well, sorry, he's probably punching someone in the throat, knowing Castaneer. But we're in I said this on the last. The problem is, it's like this is almost the issue of watching Cov at the moment, isn't it? Every game is very similar in the fact that we have really good spells, we have relatively bad spells, or we have spells where we're more under pressure. And then we come away and we talk about either a point or a narrow victory. And we're all going, well, that's good. That is really good. And it is really good. We're 6th in the table after 19 games. The problem is, in the last 9, we picked up the same amount of points as Bolton have in 7. We haven't kicked on in the last 9 games. We need to kick on now in the next period, and that's going to include the January transfers. So I don't think we're going to lose anyone. We've got no one you're thinking, someone's going to come in and bid for this guy. It's not like when we had McGoldrick or anyone like that. It's like, oh crap, we're going to lose this guy because he scored 20 goals. So that's great. The question is, do we have any money or flexibility to bring in probably the 1 or 2 players we know we need to take us to that next level? Because everyone else, I said, it's so tight, that division. If someone below us, Portsmouth's form's really good. Oxford, if one of those boys picks up that lone striker that we need, gets some, or the lone wide player we get, I think everyone is probably in the same boat as us. Like, this is looking good, but we just need to make that next step. I don't think we're unique in that. My issue would be is the fact that we've had such a good start, but we're still 6th by a point. We should be 4th by 4 points. But it also leads to this argument, sort of an internal argument over myself. Does it matter at this moment if you're in the playoffs? Or is it just the fact you want to be in that group between... I said we're all within a couple of points. There's about 8 or 9 teams who are in that chase for the playoffs, going from top down to 9th, 10th. We're in the thick of that. So we're in a really strong position going into the second half of the season. We just need that probably next player, and if we can get that one in, we'll be fine.
Really random question. He's probably not the player you'd be thinking of, but Brighton Bakari, if you could have him back, would you? I'm asking you specifically, Paul, because I your views were slightly different. I think if I asked Joey, we'll have a separate answer.
But I think the question is, and I haven't seen Joe Allen play. I've seen Callum O'Hare play.
Jamie Allen.
Sorry, Jamie Allen. Sorry.
I love this.
But if he's better than those two, then yes. But if we can only bring in a limited number of players, which I think we all sort of know our budget is restricted, I'm not sure that bringing in Bright gets round the other issues we have, which is the lack of decent wide players, or it depends what system he's going to go with. I'm not sure Bright is that far ahead of O'Hare and Allen that we go for that as opposed to going for a wide player.
But after what he did to it last year, I mean, he was literally the reason why we stepped up last season, weren't he? We weren't that team, and suddenly you put him in there, and he's making Hawula look amazing.
I think you parachute. I know this is going to sound like a bit much, but I believe it. I think you parachute Bright into this team anywhere, whether we're playing 4-3-3 or 3-5-2 or whatever you want to call it. Before you tell me I've got it wrong again, I think you put him into either formation. I just think we start pushing for top three. Because I think more than anything is that he did so much damage away from home, didn't he? And I think he tips the balance in our favour in a lot of away games this season. I mean, I don't think it's a realistic proposition. I certainly don't think we'd be signing him permanently because Robbins has been very clear on the fact that there is no money, is there? But I can't believe that we're talking about Bakari and Callum O'Hare in the same breath. And I like Callum O'Hare, but that they're night and day. To me.
But then also one of the key aspects for Bright was having someone like Luke Thomas. I just think I'd rather bring in a Luke Thomas. I think that's where our weakness is. Like, okay, Luke Thomas is probably bad as uncle, he couldn't score either. But I think that's sort of where we need to strengthen. I think there's nothing wrong with that midfield three. There's nothing. That midfield three have scored goals all season. They've been consistently fine. I don't think our midfield three is the issue. I think it's basically our front three. Our front three is by far our weakest part of the team, and it's been our weakest part of the team all season. Now, I know I'm slightly different for you two on Godden. I've yet to see Godden and think that guy's the answer to our issues, but I especially don't see him as the answer to our issue if we're playing three up front, because he's got to play through the middle.
Yeah.
And so, but you can't play that Cov team doesn't play without Biamu in it. So we're going to have to play two up front. So how do you then fit the rest of the team?
And I think Biamu and Godden, that's a natural pairing, isn't it? That feels like a very sensible thing to put those two people together. I feel like they would probably complement each other very well.
And then do you go back to like the promotion season where you bring in a right winger, put Shipley on the left, and put Kelly and Westbrook, Kelly and Allen, Kelly and Walsh, Kelly and Eccles, Kelly and I'm sure we've got another central midfielder somewhere.
I think you try and play sort of, with wing backs and a number 10. But the problem is I don't know who on earth that number 10 is. I suppose it's Callum O'Hare. But I don't know.
If you're talking about bringing Bright in, you play Bright as a number 10. But
yeah, but I'm not really talking about bringing him in. I'm talking about how absurdly better we would be with him in there. I agree with you, though. I think you've got to make a decision about which one of those two formations you go for, and then you've got to recruit for it. And I think ultimately, if it's the wing backs, then you need to recruit a number 10. If it's the 4-3-3, you probably need to recruit two wide players, don't you? Because I don't know who the one wide player would be outside of us banking on Jody Jones coming back from a 2-year-long injury layoff and hitting the ground running, which would be amazing, obviously. But I'm not sure that's that likely. The other thing is it'd be very interesting to see if he is fit, what he would look like as a number 10 as well, because you get the impression he might just be able to do whatever he wanted in this league if he was back to his very best.
I mean, it's difficult with Jody Jones because he was at his absolute best in League One. He's still relatively untried. He was his best in League Two. Yeah, he's relatively untried. And it's not a criticism. I really hope
he's only a baby still, isn't he, as well, isn't he?
Yeah, but the reality is he's never completely stood out in League One. And for me, I think he wiped this season out. I know Biamu's come back, but Biamu sort of came back in steps where the first game back was August, and it took until the end of October, start of November before you actually saw Biamu make an impact in the first team. That's 4 months. If you talk about the same with Jody Jones, you are talking sort of March. And again, that's a player who, again, different. Biamu isn't all about his pace. Jody Jones has got to learn to trust his speed again in a contact sport. I think it's Jody Jones thing. I think he's just a red herring. But my feelings, like I've just repeated it.
Yeah.
I just think that going into January, we're in a very strong position. We've got really good options in the centre midfield. The defence is fine. I think we'd all like to see. I mean, Rose has had a bit of a drop off in form, McFadden is there or thereabouts. You know he's going to do something which is going to annoy you. But in the second half against Ipswich, he had a really good game. First half, I thought he was relatively poor. But second half, when he was back in a 4-4-2, he did what he needed to do. When we rely on him yet less to use the football, I think he's a better player. When he's just got to basically shout at people and kick things.
I agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. That's not bothered about that. If you find a strength and you play to your strength and you have good games, I couldn't give less of a crap about it. He had a good game. I said Dabo got better as the game went on. That's fine. The defence is relatively fine. I don't think we have any issue with any of our defenders. The goalkeeper's fine. The midfield, I think, is fine. It's just that front three or the front two or however you're going to play it. But that's what's going to need to be resolved in January, because there's no denying that that's our issue. But, you know, it was a good game. It was a good second half performance against Ipswich. It was a good game overall. Two sort of relatively good footballing sides playing relatively good football. It was, and we are where we are going into it. I think the problem is it's sort of, until we go into January, we know who we've signed, or if we can make signings, because we all know the money's going to be tight. The question is, do you send someone like O'Hare back if you do get the option of Brighton, replace like with like? Also, is Bright going to go? Has Bright gone back from Wigan to Wolves? I mean,
no, the only reason I brought that up was just because he's not playing at all, and some totally fanciful rumour popped up the other day that they might want to give him up to someone else, probably all made up, but all hypothetical.
It is interesting that he's not playing at all for Wigan.
Yeah,
he's one of those characters, isn't he? I mean, he's a wacky old chap, and it's weird how Robbins just kind of accepted all of that and said, "You do whatever you like," and I think that's what he needs. He just needs someone just to give him all the reign in the world to do whatever he wants. And let's face it, I mean, how did we fix the issue of a weird front three last year? What did we do? We put Arula, Bakayoko, we put Bright in there, and obviously Luke Thomas was on the other side. But potentially you could have those three.
They suit each other really well, don't they, Robbins and Enabakari? Because I think Robbins has got a very fixed idea of what he wants his defence to do, and then he sort of, roughly speaking, is happy to put out a kind of midfield and attacking set that sort of are left to their own devices to a certain extent. And I think that Enabakari is the sort of player that would probably flourish in a system where he's told, use your common sense and get out there and play football, whereas a lot of players wouldn't do. And if you've gone to Wigan and their manager, who is their manager in fact? Paul, I'm looking to you on this one. This feels like the sort of thing. If Paul Cook is someone who, and I think with Paul Cook it probably is, would have a very fixed idea of what he wanted his players to do, is that Bakary might be like, I don't know if you've read my Wikipedia page, but that's not actually what I do. But I think we've probably talked about Bakary for too long for something that's definitely not happening. Although saying that, now I've said definitely not happening, has probably increased his chances of coming. I'd just like to finish off this section by saying, Paul, that your reflection on the game as being two reasonably good footballing sides as playing reasonably good football is probably the most effusive you've been about in praise of any game you've ever been to that I'm aware of. I didn't realise you enjoyed it so much.
Watching Cov at the moment at times is a pleasure. It's just at other times it's highly frustrating. But
it's still worth saying that and I think this will probably, I think Neil especially is going to balk at this, but that we have gone from being in League Two fairly recently. I don't know, that was a temporary and an aberration and all that different stuff, but that before we were in League Two we were in the bottom echelons of League One. We've now sort of slipped into feeling like we, the sort of playoffs in League One is kind of, we're a bit nominally disappointed that we're not a little bit higher. It is worth saying again that we simultaneously sort of look at the situation we're in and assess it based on its current circumstances, but roughly speaking, on the balance of things, it is an exceptional job that Robbins has done, hasn't it, all things considered?
Yeah, it needs a real stark change, didn't it? Considering just how bad we were.
Well, for the last 15 years as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, true. We just didn't know how to. We didn't know how to win at any level, did we?
Rocked all the way through, yeah. And then actually, as someone has come in and over the last 2 years, how long has he been here for this second stint?
Well, this will be his third Christmas, won't it?
Yeah. It's just, he has,
He really has.
We have been transformed, haven't we, into, admittedly, not from caterpillar to butterfly, but certainly to a caterpillar to a better caterpillar. Right. Okay. Let's.
This goes back to sort of the Mowbray season, isn't it? This is a team that is gradually building. There is each season we are bringing in players who, the relegation season after we got relegated, the season in League Two, the promotion season, is a better way of putting it. We did sign quite a few players on 2-year contracts, and there's still a couple of players who are here from that period, and we've got a bit of a spine of players who've been here for a while. There doesn't seem to have been. There's always the churn of players. There's always going to be, but it feels like it's a slower churn of players than it ever has been, or it has been for a long time. And that's again the nice thing about January. We're not talking about having to sign 4 or 5 players. As I said, we're not talking about losing anyone. I think we just need 1 or 2 decent loans. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, right. Let's go and throw over to Dom, and then we will finish up with some nonsense. Hi, Dom. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's good to be on as always.
So we're not going to preview Ipswich for the 5th time this season, or however many times it's been. Instead, we're going to have a look at Shrewsbury. So what can you tell us about them?
Well, they are officially the most boring team in League One. They have scored the fewest and they've conceded the 6th fewest in the division, which adds up to 35 goals across the games they've played. I was thinking about calculating that as like goals involved in their games per game, and it was 2, which doesn't actually sound that bad. But yeah, they're not a very enterprising side. Under Sam Ricketts, they're very much focused on keeping a tight defensive shape, and in quite a lot of the games, trying to keep a clean sheet first and foremost, and then if they score, they'll just so happen to nick the win. So it's fairly uninspiring stuff for them this season. Although they do have quite a few interesting, promising kind of players to call upon. They've got a back 3 of Ethan Banks, Landell, Aaron Pierre, and Roshan Williams, who are just 3 absolutely massive players who are big threat in both boxes. And Roshan Williams, who was at one time a really big prospect at Manchester United, who's just absolutely fast as well. So it just makes them so hard to get in behind once you can break through that defensive organisation. Their wing backs recently, they've just gone for very slow and defensive wing backs just to keep things tight. And then in midfield, Sean Goss and Ollie Norburn were quite interesting ball playing kind of midfielders, although they don't really have too much to pass the ball to. Josh Laurent, who offers a bit more energy in there and has found some form in front of goal over the past month or so. And then up front, that has been a big conundrum for them this season. They signed Jason Cummins, who was formerly a really sort of big name in the Scottish Premiership as a young prospect with Hibernian. Never really seemed to kick off after getting a big move to Nottingham Forest. Few things said that maybe he's not the most professional kind of player, but quite an energetic player. And very good in front of goal. He started off excellently for them when he's on in transfer deadline day, and just hasn't picked up from there, just from the lack of service he's getting in his side. They also brought in Callum Lang, who's had a couple of good loans in League Two and started off quite well as well. But he got injured, and then they signed Steve Morrison over the summer, the veteran former Millwall target man who retired in October to take up a coaching role at Northampton Town. So kind of left them short in attack, although they're not really doing the best job by their strikers to actually create chances for them. So yeah, they're in quite an odd position. They're 12th in the league, which is probably around par, if not slightly better for where you'd consider a club like Shrewsbury to be in League One, but it's not really setting the world alight, although they are quite a frustrating team to come up against when when they can really sort of get their game plan set into a game. So yeah.
Do you think we might win this one?
I mean, with any away game now, I'm just not confident enough. I feel it's sort of reached a point now where it's become a thing, and it's going to take something to undo it. And I'm not sure going up against a side. It's just a really tight, solid defensive unit.
Final thought: what are you more surprised about, the fact that Sam Ricketts joined Shrewsbury in the first place, or that he's still there now?
Possibly that he took over there in the first place. He came there like 6 months into his first managerial job at Wrexham, which had gone reasonably well, but it wasn't exactly tearing up trees. So it was certainly a bold decision to appoint him, and he's sort of done just about enough to keep himself in his job, so just about getting par, keeping him up last season and getting him into around mid-table this season. So it was an interesting choice, but looks to be doing a reasonable but not particularly standout job there at Shrewsbury.
Good stuff. Thanks again for joining us, Tom.
Okay.
There we go. Thanks, Dom. Worth checking out his stuff on Twitter on the Team of the Decade poll that he conducted recently. It's at Side Sammy or Sideways Sammy. Did he get sidewayssammy.com in the end? I think he might have done, mightn't he?
He did, yeah.
He did, yeah. Right, okay, so I think that's going to be us then for this week. So unless anyone's got anything they want to plug or anything that they haven't mentioned that they want to, I'm taking that as a no. Then I think I'll say thank you, Paul.
Cheers.
And thank you, Neil.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.